this Jew hatred here is a crisis for Anthony Albanese. It's an indictment of the Prime Minister, as we are sliding into something that's getting dangerously close to a Middle Eastern civil war of our own. Now, this is so tragic and so important and dangerous. Excuse me if I take a little extra time tonight to lay out exactly where we are and what grave danger we're in, and why Albanese was today blasted from Jerusalem to Washington. Now, overnight, there were 3 more anti-Jewish attacks in Sydney, this time vile messages of Jew hatred on a Jewish school, as well as on a home and a shopping centre. And that's on top of that caravan containing mining explosives that was found near Dural 10 days ago, with a note of Jewish targets inside, including a synagogue. Now, today we heard interesting things, disturbing things about both those attacks. First, the caravan, with enough explosive gel inside to cause a blast 40 metres wide. Now, I wondered last night why this caravan was initially found by a local, abandoned by the side of the road, with a list of targets conveniently inside and no detonator. Had a plot been interrupted, or was it just left there with these obvious clues to cause a media panic? Today, though, police said they had arrested the caravan's owner on other charges, arrested by a strike force to tackle anti-Jewish crimes, and that person was in jail when the caravan was found. And that, of course, adds to the theory that, yes, this was a real terror plot, extremely serious, and it was disrupted. We don't know, but that's how it's looking more. And one other thing about that caravan, by the way, this Liverpool couple had posted a Facebook ad for a caravan last December. One day later, that caravan with explosives was seen dumped by the side of the road. And 9 days ago, police raided that couple's home. The woman was charged over an unrelated anti-Semitic attack. The man is in remand, charged with unrelated weapons and drug offences, to which is pleaded not guilty. But of course, let me be clear, neither of them has been charged over the caravan with the explosive, and no one has said they're involved. Okay, that's the caravan. Now to last night's 3 anti-Jewish vandalism attacks. Less serious, you might think. Except again, police today said there are signs that someone, some organisation perhaps, is paying minor criminals and drug addicts to do some of this stuff.
We haven't identified any of the individuals of the 10 we've charged with any specific ideology that would cause them to commit the acts that they've committed. And that indicates to us that they are being orchestrated in some manner. We have identified links between certain jobs, which gives us some indication there is a level of coordination above those perpetrating the offences, but I'm not prepared to go into those details.
Now that fits with a possibility, a dangerous possibility I raised here last week and checked with another investigating agency. There are organisations, mainly Muslim or Middle Eastern ones here, which do seem to have a lot of experience hiring criminal lowlife to burn buildings. In fact, they're already blamed for building scores of buildings, mostly tobacco shops, in Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide. Many of these fires are alleged to involve members of local Middle Eastern crime gangs, especially from Victoria, gangs fighting over the illegal tobacco trade in a war that so far had around 200 shops around Australia set on fire, including 131 in Victoria and 14 in Sydney. Now, why such Middle Eastern gangs, whose leaders now often hide out in Muslim countries, might be burning Jewish targets here as well, who knows? Because they want to, because some other actor, maybe a country, is paying them, knowing that these Australian gangs are dug in well here, know how to torch things and wouldn't mind doing it. I'm speculating here, but I tell you, the police are speculating too. And in fact, it's interesting that while the police say that the 10 people they've now already arrested in New South Wales are mostly riffraff, no ideology, they have also arrested the son of this man, Mahmoud Mikhawi, the Lebanese gangster and Comanchero boss who was murdered in Sydney's recent gang wars. Again, Middle Eastern gangs, a war which killed at least 20 people on Sydney streets. His son, I should emphasise, must be presumed innocent, has been charged for allegedly not saying who was driving his car when it was allegedly used in incidents in Woollahra in November, when a ute was torched, several cars damaged, and a Chiswick restaurant graffitied with anti-Israel messages. Whatever. Even if Middle Eastern gangs here are involved, I tell you, that's no better, it's even more dangerous. Plus, of course, let's never forget, it's not these gangs that are also getting Muslim hate preachers to celebrate the murder of Jews, or mobs to abuse Jews outside synagogues, or getting protesters to carry the yellow flags of the banned Hezbollah terrorist group in our streets, or to set alight the office of a federal Jewish MP and vandalise it in a hatred which exploded almost instantly here after Hamas terrorists slaughtered 1,200 Jews. So, put that all together, and as you can see, we have a very dangerous challenge to Australia with who knows what players involved. But where has Anthony Albanese been? Let's now deal with that. Israel's Foreign Minister, Gideon Saar, has now posted a furious attack on the Prime Minister and his government after this news about the explosives. He said the attempted anti-Semitic attack at a Sydney synagogue is intolerable. This joins a long list of anti-Semitic attacks in Australia, including setting fire to a childcare centre in Sydney, firebombing a synagogue in Melbourne, and many other anti-Semitic attacks. The epidemic of anti-Semitism is spreading in Australia almost unchecked, he said. We expect the Australian government to do more to stop this disease. And opposition leader Peter Dutton today joined in the condemnation.
The racism that we've seen on university campuses, that we've seen in protests, the doxing, the attack on the synagogue through a firebombing, the attack on people's houses and cars, people are now living in fear. And it's been entirely predictable that when the Prime Minister hasn't stood up and been strong.
You see Anthony Albanese today, look, it's almost like he's thinking, what more can I do? He was out there, let's do this. I mean, let's call for them to be locked up again.
There's zero tolerance in Australia for hatred and for anti-Semitism. And I want any perpetrators to be hunted down and locked up.
No. Let me now show where we went wrong, because it goes beyond Albanese, of course. This didn't just happen the other night, it's been brooding. And especially where Anthony Albanese went wrong. Now, I don't just mean the usual list of his failures, like not speaking out strongly from the start against Muslim hate preachers, against anti-Israel pickets at our universities, against all the nasty anti-Israel protests, instead attacking Israel, encouraging this demonisation of Israel, even banning Israel's former Justice Minister from speaking here. And this policing, more policing is just Band-Aid stuff. It will not treat the poison that Albanese has helped to spread. I'll give you 3 examples of his failures, and not just his. One is immigration, obviously. Peter Dutton himself has admitted, Dutton has admitted that even as far back as Malcolm Fraser, Liberal Prime Minister, when he was Prime Minister half a century ago, Fraser made a mistake on this. His own immigration department had warned him, wait, don't take all these refugees from Lebanon's civil war. He was warned, even by his minister, said, look, they're often unskilled, even illiterate. Refugees from rural areas of Lebanon, 90% of them Muslims, they are going to struggle to fit in here. The documents have come out since. And they said this is raising the possibility that the conflicts, tensions and divisions within Lebanon will be transferred to Australia. Fraser ignored that warning about taking in refugees from essentially tribal war zones, a mistake we keep making. And of course, thanks to that, prediction true, that's one reason why New South Wales Police had to later form a Middle Eastern organised crime squad. Until, of course, the name seemed too racist. Oh, we can't say that. But almost every Prime Minister since Malcolm Fraser has also ignored that warning, including Albanese. In fact, Albanese, and this is just mad, has now given nearly 3,000 tourism visas to Palestinians from terrorist-run Gaza without even proper security checks. Plus, Albanese's government now votes against Israel, of course, at the United Nations, criticises it often to please not just his hard left, but especially Muslim voters here who now outnumber Jews 8-1. You can see the bonfire has been built. Second mistake, of course, education, because don't forget, a lot of this anti-Israel stuff is also from the left, not Muslim, not just. All prime ministers have let the left take over our school system and universities, often preaching, they're often preaching against Australia in the West. And Labor Prime Minister, look at Labor Prime Minister Paul Keating. He legitimised exactly this approach 33 years ago.
We took the traditional lands and smashed the traditional way of life. We brought the diseases and the alcohol. We committed the murders.
He goes on. Albanese, meanwhile, even flies 3 flags, not one. Lets 150 councils ban citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day out of shame. And now you can see what happens when we have told a generation of children, our children plus millions of new immigrants, that Australia is contemptible, that their cultures are probably better. Oh, the flag, our history. Ugh. So look, let me say it again. You see, it's all interlinked. Most immigrants from the Middle East, by the way, have in fact settled in well. They mean peace, okay? But it is also true that if there's no pride in Australia, that in the recent war against the Islamic State, no surprise to me that more Australian Muslims joined the Islamic State terrorists than served in the Australian army that was fighting them. And Muslim refugees that we've taken in have now killed 5 Australians in jihadist attacks. Final mistake. Albanese's government is so blind to all this, so scared now of even seeming pro-Israel, that it actually funds Islamist terrorism indirectly. It funds UNRWA, that's the United Nations group that helps Palestinian so-called refugees, has done for 70 years. Refugees keep multiplying nevertheless. And they do this despite overwhelming evidence that this UNRWA has funded anti-Israel teachers spreading hate, funded even the Hamas chief in Lebanon. They hired him as a teacher, is now assassinated, as well as some UNRWA workers alleged to be the Hamas terrorists have been filmed attacking Israel and even kidnapping Jews and even the bodies of Jews on October 7th. Yet, despite this evidence, Albanese's government actually doubled our funding to UNRWA to $20 million in 2022. That's your money. And then added another $6 million because it wasn't enough. And now dares to complain that Israel is this week banning UNRWA from Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister spokesman and a former Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army today both were appalled that any country, including Australia, could still fund this corrupted UN organisation.
If a state funds UNRWA, that state is funding terrorists. So that means that taxpayers in international countries are paying Hamas salaries.
If you're funding UNRWA, you're funding Hamas. The funding's got to stop. I'm surprised that Australia's intel agency doesn't have those basic facts that the other intel agencies have. This is a corrupt organization through and through.
All this and more has happened under Albanese's watch, and he seems to understand none of it. Now he just says, hey, why don't we just lock up the people now attacking Jews? He doesn't get the terrible danger that I've just shown you, that he's helped to whip up in his willful blindness and his greed for votes.